It can be helpful to think about a typical day at home and all of the sensory experiences that your child goes through in that day, because this might help you highlight where there are triggers for certain behaviour, for meltdowns for example, and where there are things that you can change or reduce the sensory overload. There are all the smells that accompany every meal that we all share, from breakfast through to lunch and dinner, and the smells of things cooking around the house, which can overwhelm children. There are the noises that might be generated in the home. Do you have the TV on all day? Is the radio on while you're trying to have a conversation? Do you need to hoover? Are there lawnmowers outside that are preventing your child from going out? And what about the noise from all the people in the house, particularly from siblings? There can be a lot of touch or tactile stimulation in a typical day at home. Brothers and sisters often want to touch each other, to irritate each other sometimes, to wind each other up, or just because they're being affectionate. You as a parent may well touch your child throughout the day. All of the tactile senses are involved when we wash and brush our teeth and get dressed, and all of that can become quite overwhelming for a child who's feeling anxious and stressed and has a sensitive tactile system. Their visual system may also be overloaded if they're spending a lot of time on a screen, or there is a lot of movement and activity going on in the house around them. There's probably less proprioceptive feedback going on in a day at home compared with a day at school, where there might be the walk to school, PE and playtime. So it's worth considering whether or not your child's missing out on some deep pressure and movement, and how you can incorporate that every day. In addition, whole body movement, particularly vestibular stimulation, when we move our head around, may well be less than normal when your child's less active at home. So if you find them seeking out different ways to get into different positions, such as watching the TV upside down, rocking or spinning, it may be that that's what they're craving. There are many things that might be different during lockdown that aren't necessarily sensory, but impact on your child's level of stress and anxiety, and therefore influence how sensitive they are to all the sensory experiences around them. There might be less structure and routine and predictability compared with when your child goes to school every day. At school, there are naturally regular bursts of exercise because of playtime and PE and moving around the school. That might not be the same at home, and there might be long periods of inactivity. School is generally a multisensory environment where there are lots of different activities going on for children to explore with their hands, hear things, see things, feel things. It's harder to recreate that at home. There are generally times at school when there is controlled quiet. This may be a time when your child manages to reboot, to recharge their batteries and get some downtime. It may be that you want to try and build this in at home, because it's unlikely that you will have a natural quiet period if you live in a busy household. Some children will be used to one-to-one time with an adult at school who helps them and supports them. This can be really useful and a time for them to relax and feel more in control. You might not be able to do that at home if there are lots of siblings. So it's worth considering whether you should try and build in some short periods of one-to-one time where possible. Having a safe place to retreat to at home might be really helpful during lockdown, so that your child can screen out lots of the sensory overload that's going on for them. This can be as simple as a den, a big cardboard box, or maybe their bedroom where they can take some time to be on their own and get some respite from the sensory overload. For some children, lockdown is proving really helpful. There's less exposure to lots of sensory experiences that they find overwhelming and fewer people involved. And that can be really helpful, but not for all children, and it's worth considering if that's having an impact on your child's life. The last thing to think about is that everybody's anxiety levels are generally higher during this uncertain period of time when everything is different. and your anxiety will be reflected in your child's anxiety too.